So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, great.
So,
We should mute
sorry,
ourselves.
I just wanted to just say, because this is going to get reported and sent out, but I again, this is a core community of practice of women engaged with Chevra Kadisha, and we're learning and we're growing and we're thinking more about what kavana we could have and how to understand what it is that we're doing. We have a wonderful teacher, Yehudis Golshevsky in Israel, who's been teaching us many classes, and hopefully there'll be some more to come. And we do have a panel conversation coming up where I'm hoping that we in this group, this smaller group, can share some of what we've learned and how it's changed our practice. So that's going to be in December, so look out for that. And now I'm going to hand it over, please, to Yehudis to continue. This is part 3 of 3 on the Pesukim.
So let's, I'm going to share my screen so that we can look together. Let me just kind of reduce this a little bit. It's very large. Before we even start in the Pesukim, I wanted to first go back to Menorah book. We're going to have a little bit of a visit there in any case today when talking about the Pesukim, because I found a section that I think, you know, like he wrote it specifically for people in the Chevra Kadisha, so I thought that it would be good words to hear from him specifically about Kavanas and the Pesukim and Kavana in general during the process of the Tahara and so on. So these are his words to the Chevra Kadisha, the Menorah book. אין לישראל גומלי חסדים העוסקים בצורכי המת להתפלא ולומר איך נוכל אנחנו לסדר לכוון העניינים האלו עם הפסוקים. All of the Chasidic people among the Jewish people who occupy themselves with taking care of the dead shouldn't, you know, ask them, you know, be in wonder and ask themselves, how on earth are we supposed to be able to have kavanas and so on in all of these psukim? Because the truth is that everything depends upon the good intentions that you have and the good thoughts that you have. Adam oved b'ma'at. A person, a human being, does a little bit of avoda, right? We do whatever our capacity is. And Hashem then fills in and helps and supports us to carry it out in a bigger way than we're really capable of doing ourselves. Adam miached ve'ino yodeh ligmor inyan. A person does a yichud. When he says a yichud, he's using the language of the Kabbalists, and he means you do an action, let's say, to have kavanah in anything you're doing. When we're talking about, let's say, water, right? About what water represents. Those are all different ideas of yichudim, or thinking about the Tzelem Elokim, right? As you're cleaning the body of the mace. So you say those are called yichudim. It means to say a yichud in the language of the Mekubala means essentially, like at its most simplest, that we've spoken about this before, that I don't want to live in a physical world that's not infused with its spiritual root, right? So I have to do something in my thoughts and in my heart to unite. Yichud means to make a unification, to unite the spiritual with the physical. And everything that we've been talking about has been about yichudim. It has been the way it's very down to earth yichudim, very down to earth. I should hope very down to earth and practical yichudim, but for regular people like these are yichudim that are accessible to us. So he says Adam yached. Regular people, like we make a yichud, we try our best to infuse our physical actions with spiritual content, and we don't know how to finish it. Like we don't know how to really complete the work of that in a higher sense. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us so that we're able to. He supports us and allows us to do the work that, you know, to complete the work for us. That's what it means to have the Shechina indwelling within the actions of human beings. Like it says, right? The end of the pasuk, that right? That the pleasantness of Hashem should be upon us. That we do our best with the actions of our hands, and then Hashem takes the work of our hands and he establishes it. And actually about that, what is he talking about? The Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash. It's about every ma'aseh that we're doing. V'chein amru, and so it says in Shir Hashirim, Pitchu li petach kechud Hashem machad v'ani yaftach lachem. Open me a little opening, Hashem says to us, like the eye of a needle, and I'll open to you like the gateways to the big hall. Now, we all normally think about that having to do with teshuvah, right? Pitchu li petach kechud Hashem machad, to open the opening of like an eye of a needle. But the Ma'avaya book is telling us, no, this has to do with all of the efforts that we make to spiritualize the work that we do. And he's applying that idea specifically to the work of the Chevra Kadisha. In truth, we do our little bit, and all of the real spiritual work is done on its own. That means to say we're not expected to be able to complete it. We're only expected to do what is available to us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of the rest of the process. It's enough that a person just makes the beginning. Hashem completes the work. Like it says in Tehillim, Hashem yigmor ba'adi. Right? Hashem will complete for me. Kidichtiv, as it says. Vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz. Vayichulu hashamayim va'aretz. And they came to a state of completion. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mechaleh. He's the one who brings to completion shamayim va'aretz. V'chein ktiv. Ba'avodat ol moed. Vatechal. And it also says when talking about the Mishkan. Vatechal. Me'atzma, the sages said, that it was completed, me'atzma, meaning that its spiritual aspect. You think, how can human beings make a mishkan? How can human beings do the work of Chevra Kadisha? How can human beings do any ma'aseh mitzvah? And the answer is, we don't. We just do the little, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu completes it for us. And that's true for every individual and for everything that we've done also for us collectively. Ubamikdash ktiv, and it also says in Sefer Melachim about the Beit HaMikdash, V'habayit bihi banoto, the house, the Beit HaMikdash, bihi banoto, in its construction. The implication is it's a passive verb, so it means that it was that we only did like the physical part of it, but the actuality of its full construction, Hashem did this. V'im al ha'itzim v'al avanim, and if we would say about wood and stones that built the Beit HaMikdash, lefi shayu atidim litkadesh ne'mar kach, we're talking about. The Pesukim is talking about that which was brought to be incorporated to the construction of the Beit HaMikdash, that it would be completed by Hashem Himself. If it's true of wood and stones, Kol sheken leguf shehaya nartik shel kedusha. How much more can this be said about the body, which was a nartik shel kedusha? It means a sheath, or like a sword is sheathed in a sheath. It was a sheath or a housing of holiness. So all the more so, anything that you do in order to be able to be mitapel with the mace. Now, I heard Shulam as I came in while you were in the middle of speaking, but it reminded me, I wasn't going to talk about it, but I think it's relevant to what you had said about that you did the Tahara together with your aunt. Now, here, I'm skipping down to here. I wasn't going to do it, but I think that this part I think is very relevant. So, when you're doing a tahara on a person, a special person, here is talking about a tzaddik, a person who made themselves into, that had made their lives full of merit. So then it's the zchut of the person who passed away to have people helping them, the Chevra Kadisha, whoever's doing the Tahara, that they're going to have siyata d'ishmaya. Hashem will help them to have good thoughts and to have good kavanot while they're doing the process. V'hu'ad lefanai. Here the Ma'avaya book, he lived after the time of the Arizal. He was from that same generation. Ki talmidei hamukubal Ashkenazi zatzal. He's talking about the Arizal himself. He calls him the Ashkenazi because it's right. Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal, was he was also called Ashkenazi. So the great Arizal, his students wanted to put his body in the mikveh after he passed away. Nishmat gufo mitachat yadam, his body escaped from their hands. It means to say. And the people who were the students said that they felt like as if he took himself out of their hands. And he went under the surface of the water, his body. And then he immediately came up onto the surface of the water. And so and he says, even though we don't learn from such stories about tzaddikim that are such rare stories, that they like are participating in their own tahara. That's the implication of the Mavaya book, that the Arizal participated in his own tahara. Nevertheless, he means to convey that like there's a communication going on between the person who is nifter and those who are helping with the tahara, especially when there's a close relationship between them. So Shalom is Ashrayev. So we have. Oh, I forgot to send you the document. What's wrong with me? Did I forget last time also? No, I sent it last time.
It's fine. Last time I didn't look at my email right before the class. So.
Okay. So so we're going to go through the Pesukim, and parts of it, there are parts of it where the Mavaya book comments directly on them. And so we're going to be kind of jumping back and forth a little bit, but we want to be able to, go through them carefully. So this last part, I'm calling it like the closure. It's already from the point after the Aron is covered. And so we have here the Pesukim, the first several, right? The first two. Hinei mitatosh Shlomo, Shishim Giborim Saviv La Migibrei Israel. Well, before we even go into the details, all of them are going to have relevance to. They're all going to be surrounding it's all about the kavod, the honor of the nartik shel kedusha, like the Maraya book just said, that the person, the body was a repository for the holy soul. And so there's parallels with the Aron, with the Mishkan and the respect for the Mishkan, as we've already seen before. There are going to be verses that have to do with Shmira, because we know that the body requires protection on its journey. And so part of the process of surrounding, it's kind of like this enveloping of the nifter, the nifteris, with verses, with holy verses, is a kind of enfolding them and garbing them in holiness and good thoughts and holy words as a protection for them. So some of these verses are going to be about protection. And so let's take them, let's go through them. So the first one is from Shir HaShirim, Perek Gimel. We're up here, right? So here, paralleling here until here. I can't quite mark it up. Here, okay. So from here until here. Okay, so this is our first two psukim. Hinei mitatosh Shlomo. Behold, here is the bed of Shlomo. Shishim Giborim Savivla. There are 60 mighty warriors surrounding it, Migibrei Israel, from among the warriors of the Jewish people. Kulam achuzei cherev. Each one of them grasps a sword. Each one of them is milumdei milchama. Each one of them is a master of the arts of war. Ish chabo al yericho mipachar balilot. And each one has a sword upon his thigh, mipachar balilot, in order to protect from the fear of the night. Okay, so we have here a combination of what I just said of both aspects of both shmira, of protection, right? Verses of protection, and also verses that do reference the Mishkan. And again, seeing the body as being this Mishkan, right? This former Mishkan, this Mishkan that was. So this Mishkan, we'll look at Rashi here. So we're talking about the bed. Why is the bed used as an image to talk about the Ol Moed and the Aron? The Aron itself is the place of Yichud. What's on top of the Aron? On top of the Aron are the figures of the Kruvim. And the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the innermost place where it was held, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. So we know that Shir HaShirim itself, right? Rabbi Akiva said is Kodesh HaKodashim because it makes use of the metaphor. The whole Megillah makes use of the metaphor of the relationship between a husband and a wife, right? The relationship between lover and beloved, which is a mutual relationship because they each praise each other. That's also part of the greatness, the sages said, the greatness of Shir Hashirim is this mutual praise, this mutual love. It's not one-sided. It's expressed in both directions, right? Of the praise of Knesset Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it goes back and forth. So this is called, and another, in Sefer Melachim also, we know that the Kodesh HaKodeshim is called Cheder HaMitot. It's called the bedroom, where there was an incident of Yehoash, the last remnant of the house of David, when the rest of his family, this was, in the period of the kings, so when the rest of the royal family was murdered by Atalia, so for those who may remember or may not remember their Sefer Melachim, so there was a little child, he was just a little child, and he was from the house, he was the last remnant of the house of David, and he was Yehoash or Yoshiao, and he was hidden away by the Kohanim in the Beit HaMikdash, and in order to protect him, they hid him away in the Cheder HaMitot. It says they hid him in the Kodesh HaKodeshim for years until it was safe to bring him out and reintroduce him as the next in line to take the throne. So it's called the Cheder HaMitot, the bedroom. Why is it called the bedroom? Because that was the place of the place of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Aron, the place of the Kruvim, was where all of the influence for goodness and blessing, everything to come out to the Jewish people and for all of the world was coming from that holy innermost place. So first of all, Mitato Shel Shlomo is a reference to the bed of Shlomo. When it says Shlomo in Shir Hashirim, it means Melech Shehashalom Shalo. It's talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the king to whom all peace belongs, as opposed to HaMelech Shlomo, which is a reference to Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. But when it just says Shlomo, Rashi says it means it's a reference to Hashem. So there are 60 warriors around. And that 60 warriors is 600,000 root souls of the Jewish people, right? And all of them are Achuzei Cherev, Melumdei Melchama. That means to say that the Giborei Yisrael, that's from the ones who are counted from the age of 20 until the age of 60, and they're all Achuzei Cherev, Melumdei Melchama. So what kinds of war are they experts in? They're experts in Torah, they're experts like Kohanim, they're experts in the laws having to do with keeping the Mikdash and doing the Avodah. And the idea of the sword that sits on the thigh. So according to Rashi, this is talking about the way that Talmidei Chachamim, that Jews have ways of memorizing and making sure they don't lose their Torah, that they don't forget. Okay, so that's because there's no real pshat in Shir Hashirim. You can't just read it, without Rashi. So we have Rashi there, but the Malbim cuts a little bit closer. He talks about the body, right? Mitato Shel Shlomo, the bed of Shlomo, is talking about the body itself. The human body is in a condition that's very strange, right? People who are alive, all of us who are alive. So our condition is so odd that when we make a blessing after we come out of the bathroom, so we finish off with the words Mafli La'asot, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we bless him, that he's Rofechol Basar Mafli La'asot, that he keeps us together, make sure our apertures and our vacated spaces, all of our hollows and our apertures, they're all working the way they should. Baruch Hashem. After you go to the bathroom, you make a blessing Asher Yatzar, and you finish it off that Hashem is the doctor of all flesh, and he does wondrously. So the Avudraham tells us that doing wondrously means that it's a pele. When we use the word pele, so a pele means the actual word of it, a wonder, means that it's something that is like so out there that it's unbelievable, right? It's so out there that you can't really, it's beyond, right? So when you say beyond, what's so beyond about going to the bathroom? No, what's beyond is that we're made of a soul and a body, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu causes them contra all expectations and all realities, and anything that makes sense, keeps them glued together, right? He keeps them together so that we can do the job that we need to do, being human beings in the world. with a body that only wants to disintegrate and a soul that only wants to go on high and be spiritual and have nothing to do with this world. And Hashem is mafli lasod. He takes these two so different qualities, right? Our two elements that make us what we are. And he joins them together, and all day long, our whole lives long, all the while that we're alive, it's a pele, we're walking wonders that it's possible to have such two antithetical elements to ourselves that are being held together only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu insists upon their being together. So the Malbim says, he named it Tatosh Shlomo. Here's the mitah. What does it mean, the mitah of Shlomo? It's Hashem's bed. It means to say it's the place where everything comes together. It's the place of Yichud. That's the human being, the body. And there are Shishim Giburim Savivla. There are 60 mighty ones, 60 mighty warriors who surround it. And the Malbim then actually goes through and makes a whole cheshbon. He does a whole accounting of the fact that there are 60 external parts of the body that are basically the casing that holds the body together. He goes through like which bones and he goes through the whole cheshbon. I'm not going through it with you, but he counts it out to 60. And he's got the whole thing all set up there in his commentary on Shir Hashirim. And he says, all of them are, that means the body like has its way of forcefully keeping the nefesh attached to it. And that means because we have a drive to live, and we have things that we want in this world, and we're attached to the things in this world. And that keeps us body and soul together from our part, not Hashem's mafli lasod, but just from our drive, that's a physical drive, to stay attached to the things of this world. So it's like we keep those, all the externality of our body just keeps our soul like engaged and locked in there. And ish charbo ali rechomi pachad balelot, and the cherev is always on the thigh, like the sword is always on the thigh. The thigh is a place of vulnerability. We know that Yaakov Avinu, right, that the angel of Esav got him in the hollow of the left thigh. So it means that's a place of vulnerability. From the fear of the Laila. What's the Laila? Because the nighttime comes, it's time for death. And the body is always trying to cover its vulnerability so that it won't have the nefesh removed from it. So if we're thinking about the Malbim and you say these verses, it's like you have the way of thinking about the person who is before you as having been like the Mishkan, right? And also that how much like energy was expended to keep this person together, body and soul, all the while that they were supposed to journey on this earth, right? Now, having already released the nefesh is now out of the body. Although I have to tell you, I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I saw I taught the class that I taught before this. We were learning Zechariah. There's a whole bunch of Pesukim now from Zechariah. But we're late in the Sefer already. We're already in Perek Beis, and there is a teaching from the Ramat Valley. He was a peer and a chaver of the Ramchal in Italy before the Ramchal came to Eretz Yisrael, and he talks about. We'll see if we have time at the end. I'm going to try and I'll see if I can show it to you because it's fantastic. It's unbelievable, and you'll appreciate it. In any case. The idea of requiring the shmira, right? So right away we go into the next set of verses. Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Okay, so that's familiar, right? And we have Birkas Kohanim. Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Yo'er Hashem panav elecha v'choneka. So let's break it down. May Hashem bless you and protect you. Okay, so first of all we see blessing is something that Hashem. That's the benevolence, right? But what good is a blessing if you don't have shmira? What good is a blessing if you haven't got a way to protect it, to keep it safe? And the Malbim says it's 3 levels of blessing. The first is about the blessings of the body, because that's all about bracha, about having, being given gifts, and then also having the capacity to retain them, because it's not about what you get, it's about what you get to keep, right? It's not only about getting something, it's also about being able to sustain it. So this is the first level, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses us in the body. And then after, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'choneka. Hashem should shine his countenance, his face upon you, v'choneka, and give you chen. Now, the Malbim says this one is already talking about, these are spiritual blessings. Ha'aras panim. You know what it means, ha'arat panim? It's something so subtle. When you let's say you go to the store and you run into a friend and you're both very, very busy. You have things that you need to do. You got to go shopping and then you have to go and you have to, okay, but you see a friend, someone that you really love and she really loves you. So, you're on other ends, you're at other ends of the store, but you give each other, not even a wave, but like just a little glow, like that little, like a little smile to give each other from across the way. And as soon as you see a friend and she gives you what's called a ha'aras panim, an illumination of the countenance, it does something to you inside and what you've done for her also. And you don't have to say a word to each other. And you're not going to necessarily even brush by each other because you're both doing what you have to do. But you're illuminating your countenance, each one upon the other. And we do this all the time with people that we love and people that we care about. And we know it means something and we know it touches us, but it's something it's so intangible, it's so subtle. The sense of a deep satisfaction and a kind of a nourishing love that you can get from just the what you call the ha'arat panim, like that smile that how you get like a little glow and you're able to give that out to somebody else and they give it to you. So this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses us with. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, that he'll give you ha'arat panim v'chuneka, and this will fill you with chen. Chen is an interesting, chen is also a quality that you can't really put your finger on. Chen means that you have a pnimiyut and a chitzoniyut, an internality and an externality that match each other. That's what we mean when we say that somebody has chen, that their internality is something that's shining from them. Again, it's a type of ha'arat panim. So the Malbim says this is something that's spiritual. It's not a physical blessing. It's a spiritual blessing that Hashem will show you that He loves you. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, and you feel chained up, like you've just gotten a dose of chain, receiving chain, his chain, feeling like you have chain to give. This is something that's spiritual. And the last of them, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Hashem shall Yisa Hashem panav elecha. Now, Nesias panim is a very interesting term because it says in the Torah, lo yisa panim, right? When we use this term in the Torah, it means not to show favoritism. And it's forbidden for a judge to show favoritism, and Hashem doesn't show favoritism, and so on. It's like a negative thing. Laset panim is not a good thing. And nevertheless, it says, Yisa Hashem panav elecha. Hashem will raise his face to you, and which also is interesting because the idea is like he's here and then he looks up at you. Yisa Hashem panav elecha. So the Malbim says, that's because the third blessing, which is the highest, is the body and the soul together. It's not like the first and the second. The first is physical. The second is spiritual. The third is the unification of the physical and the spiritual. Why should it mean that Hashem will show us favoritism? Well, when you say favoritism, it means like I did something wrong. And nevertheless, Hashem is nosei panim, right? Nosei panim means that he's like, he looks the other way, kaviyachol. Now, why does he do that? Well, he does it because I am a unique creation. We are all unique in that we are body and soul together. So when you say these pesukim, right, the person who's with you, the nifteris, is someone who has spent her life in the state of body and soul together, which results is in the highest of all blessings, yasem lecha shalom, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you peace and wholeness. He'll grant it to you because he understands how difficult it was for you to be a soul attached to a body. If you sinned, it wasn't your soul that sinned. If you sinned, it was the body that sinned. And the body sinned because it has temptations. It suffers from its temptations. It has obstacles that it has to overcome. And once the person is already leaving this world, so we are. It's a kind of reminder. Again, this is the closure, accompanying the person out, because this is basically the next stage is only to go to the kever. So on the way out, it's like, no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands you, and the highest of all blessings, Birkas Kohanim, the uppermost part of it is that Yisa Hashem panav elecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands why you made the mistakes that you did. V'yasem lecha shalom. And he'll make for you peace. He'll bring you to completion and peace. Okay, so that came from Bamidbar Perek Vav, Birkas Kohanim. Now, the next pasuk is standing alone. It's from Hosea, Yelchu Yonkotav, V'hi Kazayit Hodo, V'reach Lo Kalvanon. One pasuk from the 14th chapter of Hosea. It's the 7th verse. Now, to understand like contextually where this is coming from, so this is a few psukim into the Haftorah of Shabbat Shuvah. Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha ki koshalta bavonecha. That's what Hosea calls out. That's the beginning of the Haftorah for Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbos that's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So, as part of the drasha, part of the Haftorah of Shabbat Shuvah, so we have to understand it in context. What it says, the Shabbat Shuvah, the Haftorah there starts off, Shuva Yisrael, return, O Yisrael, ad Hashem Elokecha. You can go all the way up, back to Hashem Elokecha. And it's on the basis of this verse that the Gemara says in Yuma, Godel Tshuva, right? It's a pair Godel Tshuva shemagas at Kisei HaKavod. That Tshuva is so great, it can bring a person back to Kisei HaKavod, back to the throne of glory. Now, what does it mean to go back to the throne of glory? The throne of glory, it says that all of the souls are hewn out from the throne of glory. It means mitachas mikisei kavod chutzava. That's what it says in the morning song of Odela Kale. Mikisei kavod chutzava, lagur be'eretz arava. That the soul is hewn out from the bottom of the kisei hakavod, every single soul, which means that we have an origin, right? Our origin on high is in Hashem. And through tshuva, it's possible to go back all the way back to the place from which we emerged. So after that opening, we move further down into the Pesukim of that chapter, and we have a description of the rectified state of how it's possible to flourish after everything is repaired through tshuva. Now we can understand how did this get incorporated, right, into this part of the process of accompanying the person out to the end, to the place where they're to be laid to rest, is because it's a kind of comfort. You went through whatever you had to go through. You did in life whatever it is that you did, but sof kol sof, what happens after all the repair will be completed? Yelchu yonkotav, the yonkot are the like of a tree, that you have these little saplings that come out from by the roots, that it's generating more trees. Not that it came from like a seed that fell and then it created a new plant, but actually certain trees, they send out shoots that come out from the roots, like fig trees, right? So all of those new trees that come out from the original trunk, they come out from the ground, but they're really coming from the root that's close to the trunk. Those are called yonkot, and they're called yonkot because they are yonek. Linok means to draw off sustenance, like to nurse. So yelchu yonkotav, the person, this is speaking about a person who's done tshuva, who's gone through all of the cleansing that they need to finish their story. And once that happens, those new shoots will go forth. V'yi kazayit hodo, and his glory, that person's glory, will be like a beautiful big olive tree. It means, and the Meforshim say this is talking about children, generations, all of the good results of their actions. It means they still have fruits that they're providing in the world. There's good stuff that will still be extending from them. And they'll be like a big, beautiful olive tree, v'reach lo kalvanon. And the scent, the aroma of the person, it means on the level of the soul, will be like the Lebanon, fresh and clean, like the northern part of Eretz Yisrael, with a beautiful scent. So this is like after a person, we were this came up in a different class. It's like I don't know. Do you remember having learned Lahavdil, Julius Caesar? Did you have to learn? You read it in high school or junior high school or whatever it is, right? So what did Shakespeare say? He said he put it in the mouth of Cassius and Brutus. I don't remember which one says it, right? That there's right, that the good that men do is interred with them, the evil that they do lives on, right? And that what gets buried with the person is the good, And what lives on is the mistakes that they make. And we say exactly the opposite. No, not so. That the evil that a person does has an expiration date. Like all things that are negative. Because Mida Tova Meruba, because the truth is that good is much more powerful than evil. So the evil in a spiritual sense, and also in a physical sense, it has an expiration date. But the good, Yonchul, Yonkotav, Yikazayat Hodo, that the good is what lives on. The good doesn't disappear. The good is eternal. The evil is not eternal. So as the person is going to their rest, it's another pasuk to remind, right? To bear in mind, whatever, even the littlest bit of good that this person did, it has yonkot, it has toladot, it has children and grandchildren, it has further development that will come from it. Now, the next psukim come from Zechariah. Now, what's interesting is that Zechariah, the next set of psukim, there's two psukim, and then there's a skip. It skips a few of the psukim from Zechariah in the 4th chapter, skips a few, and then it does another one. And then later, there's more. There's a, oh no, that's the other way around. In Tehillim, it flips. So we have here like a little bit of we should be familiar somewhat with this area because Zechariah we've already seen because of the garments, remember? Came up twice already. So this we haven't seen yet. This was the vision. It's Ra'iti Menorat, Vehine Menorat Zahav. This is going to be the Haftorah during Hanukkah, right? We have a Haftorah during Hanukkah of Menorat Zahav. Is it Hanukkah? Yeah, because we have there's the Yechezkel Haftorah, and then there's also Ra'isi Menorah Zahav. I think they go right next to each other. So no, it's on maybe it's Baloscha. I'm mixing it up. It's Baloscha. So Ra'isi V'hinei Menorat Zahav. Behold, and I saw a menorah of gold. Now, in this vision of Zechariah, so it's about the structure. We'll see that it's a description of a structure that you think, what on earth is it doing here? When we're not talking about, this is being said as the person is on the way to being laid to rest. So what on earth is this section from Zechariah doing here? And then there's a little bit of a skip down to here to Pasuk Zayin. So I'm going to read it and translate it, and then we're going to go run over to the Mavaya book for a minute because he'll give us an insight. Ra'iti v'hinei menorat zahav, zahav kula. I behold and I saw in his vision, Zechariah is describing how he saw a menorah of gold. It was entirely of gold. The gula al rosha, and it had a gula al rosha. Now, so we have to imagine, try and imagine the figure of a menorah, and then above it there's a gula. It's like a well, like a reservoir, a big reservoir above. So you see, there's a lower structure called the menorah. On top of it is what's called the gula, which is a reservoir. Upon it, meaning on top of it, v'shiva neroteha aleha, and there are 7 branches that have cups that hold the oil, right, to make the light. Shiva v'shiva mutzakot lanerot, and each of those cups has a pipe. So there are 7 pipelines. Those are the mutzakot. That there are pipelines that run up from the gula, from the reservoir where the oil is, that's running down and goes into each of those 7 cups that are the 7 branches of this menorah. Does everyone get the image? Okay, so, and then on top of that, or really to the side of it, so on top of the gula and to each side of it, above that reservoir, we'll see, right? Asher aloshat, ushnaim zeitim aleha. And there were to the, above the gula, above the reservoir, 2 olive trees. Echad miyamin hagula ve'echad al smola. One to the right and one to the left. And even though there's like a skip here, so I'm just going to tell you what it is that the whole idea is that each of those olive trees have, they're flowing with oil that go down into the gula, it goes into the reservoir. And then the reservoir fills, and then the oil streams down through those 7 pipelines to go down into the cups, and then the cups are where the flames are, right? So instead of seeing only a menorah, it's like all about the superstructure of what feeds the menorah, right? Because the menorah is already the end product, but there's all this whole structure of how the oil gets to the menorah so that it can give off light. You say, what on earth does this have to do with saying this at the aron of the niftaris? What is the relevance? Okay, so this is all talking about the structure of the Tzelem Elokim in symbolic language. It's all about all of the spheres and the way that they are arranged. So the 7 lower ones, we're talking about the qualities that are from Chesed down until Malchus. Like those are the qualities that we work through during the time of Sphira, right? Chesed, Vur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchus. So those are the 7. And that's like the 7 repositories of the oil where the flames are actually lit, because that's actually what you see, right? In terms of the person, so what are you really seeing for the most part? The place where they're acting and the place where they're living is in the range of the lower 7 midot. But the truth is, you have to have something that's providing vitality, oil, the fuel, right? What's oil? The oil is the fuel. The fuel has to be coming from a higher place. So there's a gula, and then above the gula, to the right and to the left of it, there is two olive trees, which are representative of da'at, and then also above them, chokhmah and bina. So we have another higher structure that's got 3 parts to it. But the whole vision of it is incorporated here because it's about recognizing, well, what this person might be in their aron. The tahara is finished, right? The tahara is finished. All the whole process is done. But I'm not allowed to forget for an instant what was the nartik of kedusha. What is this person? What was this person while she was alive? As a sheath and an expression of the holiness of the soul that comes from on high, that's a piece of God. It's a chelek elokam imal mamish. And so the Pesukim from Zechariah are meant to keep us in mind of this. Now, let's look and see here. This is from Avaya book. Remember, all of these practices that are done in the Chevra Kadisha, some that are no longer done, some that are only sometimes done in some places, and also the things that you do. So for the most part, where are they brought down and first written down about? Here, right? So achar shekisuhu ba'aron, after the person has been covered in the aron, yomru, they shall say, meaning the members of the Chevra Kadisha, ra'iti v'hinei menorah tzarahav. He's telling us to read those Pesukim, to recite the Pesukim that come from Zechariah, Perek Dalet, which we just read, right? V'chavei, what's the idea? Meaning, what are you supposed to have in mind? The hashpaot hamenorot mishiva mutzakot elyonot im shnayim zeitim she'aleihem shehem shtei gulot hakotorot v'yachad kulam merikim b'tzadik yisod olam u'misham el aron habrit ha'elyona. Now, I'm going to go back and explain to the extent that I can, but what he's referencing here is what I told you before, that you're supposed to have in mind that the soul that was inhabiting this person's body came from the highest place, and it was only measured out and poured out into this body, into this structure of this lower menorah that was this person. But the thing that's wondrous to me is that he says, "V'yichud gorim aliyat nefesh hatzadikim." This helps the souls of tzadikim to rise, to ascend back to their source. When you acknowledge that they came from the source, right? The whole idea of the flow of the oil is that all of the vitality, the soul vitality of the person came from on high. By acknowledging that that's where they were rooted, so it helps them to rise. Now, even though the Mavaya book says the nefesh of a tzaddik, right? The soul of a tzaddik. But the practice of saying these verses is universal. We don't make distinctions between tzaddik, non-tzaddik, not as if we could know tzaddik or not tzaddik, right? So it doesn't make a difference. So it means that it's good. It helps the person's soul to go and rise back to its place on high. Now, אחר כך, יאמר בשבח הכבוד העליון. Let's go back to our verses. So after having recited those 2 verses from Zechariah, Bet and Gimel, we skip down. Mi'ata har hagadol lifnei Zerubbabel lemishor. Okay, so this it then goes to talk about who was Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was a descendant who came from the house of David, but he wasn't a king by any means, and he was a governor that was placed by the Persians, to be in charge of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim and the resettlement of the area of Yehuda, when the Jewish people came back after Galut Bavel, after the 70 years of exile to Babylon. So we returned when it was already the Persian Empire, and Zerubbabel was like the figurehead of all of this rebuilding. I mean, he did do the rebuilding. So Zechariah, at this very, very critical time of rebuilding, right? It's a time of reconstruction. So he had a vision of the Har Hagadol Lifnei Zerubbabel Lemishor. Here's this big mountain before Zerubbabel. He needs to have the way cleared for him, and the mountain is going to be crushed down to be like a plain. So that means to say, this is now more of a protective pasuk, right? Is that the Nifteres has, like all of us, because of the accumulation of debt, we'll say, throughout a lifetime. So there can appear to be like a mountain, a big mountain that's that it stands before the person, and so what does it mean that it becomes like a mishur? Well, this is very comforting. It means that even the thing that appears to be the big obstacle, that it can be flattened out. It can be made into a plain. And then the stone, one stone, will be reserved to be the cornerstone for the new Beit HaMikdash, and Tesuot Chen Chenla. And it's and everyone will say about it Chen Chenla. She's lovely, she's lovely. Now, this is talking about the second Beit HaMikdash and the rebuilding of the second Beit HaMikdash in context, to bear in mind. But the idea of Tesuot Chen Chenla, it's very interesting. The Meforshim say there, I think it's the Malbim who says it, that there were people who survived. There were survivors from the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash who lived long enough. They were young, and they witnessed the first Beit HaMikdash before its destruction, lived through the destruction, went down to Bavel, came back out of Bavel, and then came back and saw the rebuilding of the second Beit HaMikdash. And when they saw the second Beit HaMikdash being rebuilt, which started in a very humble way, it really started very humbly. When we think of the Beit HaMikdash and its glory, we're thinking of later on in the period when Herod had already reconstructed it, that he already rebuilt it. But really, it was much more of a humble structure, especially at the very beginning, when really the prophets Haggai and Zechariah kind of forced the Jewish people to pick up the stones and the wood and get building, not to wait for it to happen by itself. Now, so this promise of Chen Chenla is that the Zkenim, there were people from the earlier generation who were disappointed in the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. It's hard for us to think about it in those terms, that they would have found it a big disappointment. Like, this is a Beit HaMikdash. That's what you call a Beit HaMikdash. We saw the Beit HaMikdash, how do older people sometimes talk, I remember what it was like when it was Shlomo's building, right? Could you imagine? The people who still remembered it, and they had lived and they had been and visited it and seen it in its glory. And then they said, this is not a Beit HaMikdash. This is just like, it doesn't measure up. And Zechariah was sharing with Zerubbabel and with the Jewish people, Chen Chenla, that actually, even if it appears to be imperfect, it's still perfect, Chen Chenla, that Tzuot Chen Chenla, and that everybody has to be able to acknowledge that it has its own chen. It has a unique chen. So it just is in terms of my understanding. Again, I didn't see it inside why this is incorporated, other than that it's the closure of this section of Zechariah, chen chenla. But my own feeling about it is that we know because of the context that it comes from, is like even where it appears to be imperfect, right? We're talking about the closure of a person's life. Wherever it appears to be imperfect, nevertheless, chen chenla. It has its glory and it has its beauty, and we want to be able to emphasize that, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to see the chen. He wants us to see the chen. And then the Mavaya book calls these next verses Ata yigdalna koach Hashem kasher dibarta le'emor. Where are they coming from? Well, they come from Bamidbar, and it's also basically from the same. It's all one flow. So it's a little interesting because it's like the first pasuk and the last pasuk of a whole section that if you don't know the context, it sounds a little strange. Okay, so va'ata, and now, yigdal na koach Hashem kasher dibarta le'emor. Magnify, please, Hashem, your power, as you said, as you promised, saying. And then there's a blank. You see, there's an ellipsis of like 4 psukim that normally would be here, but you don't recite them. But we sort of have to know what they are because otherwise it doesn't make so much sense. And then it closes, V'ulam chayani v'malei kvot Hashem et kol haaretz. And then it's, however, chayani, Hashem promises, it's an oath, and v'malei kvot Hashem et kol haaretz, and the glory of God filled all of the earth. Now, what on earth is going on here? These are 2 psukim that are like 2 brackets. So you're missing the middle. You don't know what it is, unless your familiarity with the psukim is good enough that you would remember where this comes from. So let's see. Bamidbar Yudalit, I brought over here. What are we talking about? Well, Bamidbar Yudalit is Parsha Shlach. The Jewish people have just made a terrible mistake by denying the land, and have been threatened with destruction. And Moshe Rabbeinu steps in and he prays on behalf of the Jewish people. And it's very reminiscent of what happened after the sin of the golden calf. In fact, we conflate these 2, right? These 2 incidents, they get conflated. And the language of Salachti Kidvarecha, which is actually from here, Vayomer Hashem Salachti Kidvarecha, we actually borrow it from here, even though the context here is in Bamidbar, and what happened after the sin of the spies and their forgiveness, the forgiveness of the Jewish people, although how forgive they were when everybody had to die, and they spent 40 years in the Midbar, and all of the men of that generation between 20 and 60 died. But okay, bearing that in mind. So, but it means they didn't get destroyed on the spot, right? Now, we carry this over backwards on Yom Kippurim. We say, Salachti Kidvarecha, Salachti, 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 as if it's after the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, which took place not then, but at the time of the sin of the golden calf. So let's look at the context, right? Va'ata yigdal na koach Hashem kasher dibarta le'emor. Wait a second. Moshe, when trying to pray to save the Jewish people after the sin of the spies, he goes back and he invokes what happened at the time of the sin of the golden calf. He says, let you magnify your koach, your power. What's your power? The power of your forgiveness, right, Hashem? You should activate this power of forgiveness, just like you promised, kasher dibarta, when you revealed the 13 attributes of mercy to me after the sin of the golden calf. As you said, Hashem, erech hapayim v'rav chesed, nosei avon v'fesha v'nakei lo yinakei. Is this all of the 13 attributes of mercy here? No, it's kind of like skeleton notes. It's not all of them, but it's most of them, and it reminds us of them enough. That means to say there's a limit, Hashem, to how much you're going to take vengeance or how much you're going to punish, because Mida, Tova, Meruba, actually, that the measure of good is 500 times as powerful as the measure of bad, is actually, the sages said about this verse. Slach na lavon ha'am hazeh ki godel chazdecha v'chasher nasat l'am hazeh. Forgive this people in accordance. Please forgive the sin of this people in accordance to the greatness of your loving kindness, just as you bore their sin. Here's nasata. Remember, we have that Yisa panim, Yisa Hashem panav elecha, nasata. Just like you looked aside, that you forgave, la'am hazeh, mimitzrayim v'hema, as you have forgiven them all along. Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha. And Hashem said, I have forgiven in accordance with your words, meaning you convinced me, Moshe. Well done. V'ulam chay ani v'malei kvot Hashem et kol haaretz. And then it ends off with a promise that Hashem's glory will fill all of the earth. Why is this here? Well, on one level we can see, because it's a statement of forgiveness, and that's a perfect closure. is to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yigdal na koach Hashem kasher dibarta. Remember that it's referring back to the revelation of 13 attributes of mercy. Mavarya book says many times in his book that the Chevra Kadisha are there as agents of the 13 attributes of mercy. And he goes through it, and it's very Kabbalistic, but he says that's what you're there for, is to be the agents of Hashem's 13 attributes. So here they are invoked again. And the promise of Kvod Hashem, that God's glory will fill all of the earth. Again, it's the idea like, what does Hashem want? Human beings down here on the earth, being alive all the while that he wants them to be in order to carry out his will. I have to already let you go soon. Now, the last ones are actually less complicated, okay? All of these here, let's look. The first, Uvinsoa Mishkan. Well, we spoke about this. And when the Mishkan traveled, Uvinsoa Mishkan, Yoridu Oto HaLevi'im. It was the job of the Levi'im when it traveled to let it down when they camped. Uvachanot Mishkan Yakimu Oto HaLevi'im. And when they camped, the Mishkan, when the Mishkan stopped, it was the job of the Levi'im to pick it, to build it up. The Hazah HaKarev Yumat. And any stranger who comes to try and touch and move or carry or put down the Mishkan and its parts, so they won't survive. So the first one we see about Yoridu Oto HaLevi'im, the Mavarya book brings it. Binsoa Mishkan here. Nesiat Hamet HaTzadik Al Katef Ubesod V'aviu Et Mishkan Al Moshe. First of all, the fact that we spoke about this a long time ago, that the body is supposed to be carried above the shoulder. So this is the idea of carrying the Aron and carrying the Mishkan, that it's carried on the Katef, above the shoulder, at the place of the head. Uvinsoa Mishkan, Shia Neshama Hazot, Amemushkenet Ba'olam Hazeh Ba'al Kocha. When you read the verse of Binsoa HaMishkan, of the Mishkan traveling, that's the soul that has been dwelling in this world inside of the body of the person that you have before you, Baal Korcha. We come down into this world against our will. We don't want to separate from Hashem. We're sent down. We have a shlichus to do. So when you say that the verse of the Levi'im, it's their job to put the Mishkan down. That's like the idea of the soul coming down into the world. It's being forced down. Kedichtiv. And then we have the verses of protection that's kind of put things together, right? V'hi binsoa Aaron, v'yom Moshe, kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yinusu misanecha mipanecha. As the Aaron was traveling, so Moshe said, "Arise, Hashem, and disperse your enemies, and all of your enemies will be scattered before you." Well, what are the enemies here? We're talking about the fact that when a person leaves this world, we want very, very much that any of the remnants of the negative that they did in the lifetime, that they shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of anything that could be attaching, any evil or negativity or tum'ah, or I don't mean tum'ah of the body, I'm talking about, we call them kitrug, forces of negativity, because it's the natural result, the fallout of their actions. It shouldn't be clinging to them, should be dispersed and spread away. So you're actually like acting like the Levim, carrying the Aron, trying to disperse and spread away and get rid of all possible negative energies that come from the other side that could be because of the person did sins in their lives. Why? Now, this pasuk and the next one, it's actually 3 pasukim, are from Tilim Tzadik Aleph. Now, that Yoshe B'Seiser is also incorporated into the order that's said at the gravesite. At least it's Minhag Yerushalayim. I'm not sure what's done in Chutz La'aretz, but to say Yoshe B'Seiser. Now, Yoshe B'Seiser is a chapter that we say it's incorporated into Kriyat Shema Shal HaMitah. And the reason why is because it's a chapter of great protection. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu, this is a tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu that he said when he had went on high to receive the Torah, and the angels tried to incinerate him with their fiery breath, because they said, "Ma enosh ki tizkirenu v'adam ki tifkedenu." The angels said, "What is a person doing? What is a Yulud Isha? What is a human being doing up here trying to take our Torah away from us?" So it's a protection from spiritual forces that are antagonistic, right? We'll say that. And so Yoshe B'Seser is incorporated into lots of different practices. Like I said, Kriyat Shema Shalamita. There are people who like to put Yoshe B'Seser in a baby's cradle, and all different kinds of practices of protection, because it's considered to be a school of protection. So it's not a surprise that as we close out, and it's time to bring the person to their resting place, so that we have some of the Pesukim are incorporated here. What's interesting is that two of them, Yud Aleph and Yud Bet, are said, and then Yud is said. It kind of doubles back, which is, I find it interesting, and I didn't find a reason for it. Although I will say that there was a Kabbalistic practice that's sometimes used for intense shmirah, for intense spiritual protection, to say Yoshe B'Seser 7 times going backwards. So that's the only thing I could think of that has any relevance to the fact that the pasuk is reversed here. But it's not like an actual reversal, because it's Yud Aleph Yud Bet, and then it goes back to you. So for his angels, he will command on your behalf to guard you on all of your paths. Al kapayim yisamucha, they will carry you, lift you up upon their hands. Remember, that's the idea of right, Nesiat kapayim, carrying the person above. The aron is going to be carried above the body. Aktefayim pentigof be'evan raglecha, lest you strike your foot on a stone. Your foot is your most vulnerable. Represents the place of your greatest spiritual vulnerability. So lest you strike your foot on the rock. And then it's coming back to Pasuk Yud, Lo tu'uneh alecha ra'ah, v'negel lo yikabu alecha. No evil shall befall you, and no plague shall come close to your tent. Now that closes off the Pesukim of protection that are from Tehillim Tadik Aleph, and the last two, Hashem Ish Milchama, Hashem Shmo, is of course from Shirat Hayam, and Hashem Yilachem Lachem Vatem Tacharishon is also from the. They're all coming. They're both. It's not part of Shirat Hayam, but it's both from the same part of Shmot, Parashat B'Shalach. Now the first one is Hashem Ish Milchama, Hashem Shmo. God is a man of war. Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei, it really is his name. Now this is a pasuk that is it's full of power. Hashem Ish Milchama, Hashem Shmo. The Zohar Kodesh on Parshas B'Shalach says that there's force in this verse. It means to say when it's said, and when you say it in Shirat Hayam every day, you're supposed to be reminded Hashem Ish Milchama, Hashem Shemo, and that's supposed to be said forcefully. That Hashem and His name is protective and strong, right? And the last, Hashem Yilachem Lachem Vatem Tacharishon. Also in the Zohar and Parshas B'Shalach, Hashem will fight for you. Atem Tacharishon, you will be silent. I don't know if there's any more poignant pasuk to send a person off to their resting place than to say, Atem Tacharishon, Hashem will fight for you, you'll be silent. This person can no longer speak for themselves, do anything for themselves. They are in the state of Duma. Now, Dom means to be quiet. Duma is the name of the angel that's in charge of Gehenna and the grave and death itself. That's what it says in the Gemara. So Duma means silent. So there's no person more silent, right? There's no place more silent than the grave. There's no person who's more of a cheresh, the cheresh in the sense of tacharishon, to be not deaf, but to be dumb and not be able to speak, than the person who's already no longer body and soul together. So it's very comforting to hear Hashem Yilachem Lachem. He's an Ish Milchama. He's so strong, but what is he doing with his strength? He's lochem b'shvilchem. Hashem Yilachem Lachem. You don't have to worry. You're sending off the nifteres with a comfort. You don't have to worry that you can't defend yourself and that you don't have words to say and that you can't make excuses for yourself. Hashem Yilachem Lachem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chlodo v'atzmo is going to advocate on your behalf and take care of you and ensure the safety and security of your soul on its return, and you don't have to do it anymore. And I'm going to end off, because it's already late, I'm going to finish off by saying it's really like quite, my father's yurtzeit was 2 days ago. And I'm always brought back to thinking, he was such a doer. He was so kind heart through his life. He was like, he was such a manager. He was so good at being on top of things. He was like perfect, so I don't, no one's perfect, but like perfect at being like, the boss of everything, of like making sure everything is taken care of. And for to have that for a father is her was like really the best. And makes you feel very secure. But I remember during the last months of his life, so he was getting weaker and weaker. And I remember saying to him, Daddy, you're not able to see so well, and you're not working with your hands so well anymore. You always use the phone to deal with paying bills and dealing with the bank and all of this. How are you managing with all of this? So this is like months before, because he passed away in Kislev. And this would have been sometime after Purim, prior Purim, because they were living with us for 4 months before the last hospitalization. So I said, all of a sudden I woke up, I was like, Daddy, you haven't been able to deal with the phone already for a while, and your eyes are not doing well. So how are you dealing with all of like that, like taking care of the technical things? And he looked at me, he's like, I stopped taking care of it. And I said, really? He said, no, I'm not taking care of those things anymore. I said, well, somebody should. Do you want me to take care of it? He said, yeah, if you want to, you can. But he was like, I'm done taking care of things. I'm done. And through the end, we used to learn Mavaya book together. Did I mention this? I don't know if I mentioned this. I did. Anyway, so it's like, getting closer and closer and closer to the time of, it's like, Hashem yilachem lechem v'atem tacharishon. What a gadlut hamochin, to have really such a very expanded understanding of like, my time of doing is finished. Like, he had a big awareness of this way, already before. It wasn't only after he died, but like before, he already was very aware. And he said, like, my time of doing is done. Like, whatever I've done, I'm going to have to pay, and whatever I have to pay, whatever Hashem should be merciful. He always begged that Hashem will be merciful on him, that he won't judge him too harshly, but he expected to have to pay dearly for everything that he ever did wrong. And I would try and explain to him that I didn't think that he should hold on to this idea, since he had so many Yisurim and he was never complained a single moment. But I just am feeling a very strong connection with the last closure, right? Hashem yilachem lechem v'atem tacharishon, right? That's going to be true for everybody in the end. And so ashrechem that you get to send off Kedoshim and Tahorim, the Jewish people. You get to send them off to their final rest until Mashiach comes, until it's time of Tchiyah, with such powerful, beautiful words that are full of chizuk and full of strength and full of holiness. Like ashrechem, mamash.
Thank you. Well, we certainly have different sense of what it is that we're saying now, now that you've helped to contextualize everything. I hope that as we keep going over the notes, and I'll send out notes, as the shiurim and the notes, I'll send out some notes soon. It will help us elevate the women that we care for even more, and that your father should have many aliyahs in the Shemaim, high, all the stuff that you're teaching us and helping us in our avoda also. So thank you.
Amen. And don't forget that Bavaya book, right? He said, don't ask yourselves, how can I possibly do this? And what does it matter what I think? And I only know a little. No, he says, right? Hashem yigmor badi. You do pitchuli pitach kechudah shel machat. You open up the little, the eye of the needle, and he does the work. He does the work.
We're waiting for another topic, so you'll let us know.
So I did think about it. There's some very, very deep stuff in the Onyx Shabbos and the Mekor Chaim. This is more like I'll have to dig around. There are places to look, and but it's going to be more for you. It'll also shine a light into the process of tahar, but it's going to be more for what you have to glean for your avodas Hashem from what you're doing for what you do for the niftarim.
Great.
So
well, definitely anyway. Trust your judgment to help us. That's what we're looking for, to float up higher and to be able to.
There's definitely more. The only question is what to